Hello everyone, welcome to the first real comeback video of Ray's Social Soapbox, the rebranded channel. Today what we're going to be going over is a video I've been wanting to do for years, but I've been fighting with my health and disability stuff, but I finally feel up to making this video, although it's taken me a long time to put it together despite the somewhat short content. Anyway, today we are going over how to apply for welfare benefits and particularly the application in California on applying for Medi-Cal, CalFresh, and cash aid benefits. Those three in particular we're covering because it's all one application and you can get it done in hopefully under an hour. And I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to give a PowerPoint presentation, just give a little background on eligibility and what are the benefits, what kind of benefits do you get under these programs. But if you want to just skip to the application process itself, I will have that marked in the video with chapters, so you can just skip right to it. My brain fog has also been a little bit rough today, so I keep losing my train of thought as I try to record this video. But I'll try to stay to the point, so this is a more accessible video for those of you who just want to get this application done so that you can get the benefits that hopefully you are eligible for and that you deserve and that you have a right to, as we'll get into. I'm also going to have my webcam off for the portion of the PowerPoint or the presentation slides. It's not a PowerPoint, it's a Google Slides, but whatever. Minor details. And I will have subtitles on the whole time that I've gone through and fixed to make sure they are accurate. But I am sorry for the conflicting access needs of having someone's webcam on and that being helpful. It just was going over the slides that I had made in a way that was making the print not so legible, and unfortunately that was just a conflicting access need that I had. But the presentation is relatively short, so let's get the presentation started. Okay, so we are going to be covering applying to healthcare, food, and cash welfare benefits in California, specifically the ones you can apply to through one application called BenefitsCal. So first we're going to define welfare benefits because some people may not know what that means or what they are. We're not going to get too into it because it would be a much longer video to go over all types of welfare benefits and the history of welfare benefits, but as a basic definition, welfare benefits, also known as government benefits, are programs designed to give basic living assistance to people in need, typically through some form of financial or disability need. They have long been demonized through propaganda campaigns funded by the government to discourage people from using these benefits. And these propaganda campaigns combine stereotypes on race, class, and other socioeconomic factors, making them difficult and harmful for people to access. And because of these propaganda campaigns, as well as government efforts to not advertise on welfare benefits and how to apply to them and eligibility and proper explanation of how eligibility works, because there's been lots of rules layered on over the last several decades, so they makes this process complicated to understand a lot of the times. And reaching a person to ask questions or get updates about your application can be difficult and at times impossible, which is why I want to make this video. As far as I could find, there isn't really a video covering this application process, especially in recent years and especially with the implementation of BenefitsCal, the somewhat newer application and website that California has launched to make the process more simplified for people and the workers doing this application process. So I want to make that video. If you have other questions that you think of that I didn't cover, please put it down in the comments and I will try to get to it as soon as I can. I didn't really introduce my knowledge. I've been doing some form of case management and advocacy in public health for the last 10 years or so. I haven't had experience with applying to every single program, but for the experience that I lack, I will do the research for you, and I will put those efforts into videos like this so that we can have at least a little bit of help for you all and whoever needs it. Okay, moving on. So we're focusing on the 3 program types that I mentioned because, as I said, you can apply using one application. And those programs are Medi-Cal, which is California's Medicaid program, otherwise known as like the public health care program that we have. CalFresh, which is California's SNAP program, also known as formerly as food stamps, and Cash Aid, which are a variety of programs and the offers of which vary by county. This was the program I actually knew the least about and had to educate myself a little bit. I thought it was just a couple of programs, but it's actually many, many types of programs. Most importantly, these programs can be life-saving, and you have a legal right to access these programs. These programs came about through laws, and that means your access to them are your legal right. I think that's not really talked about enough, and because of the demonization of these programs, it's treated as bad to access these programs or stigmatized, and it is stigmatized, which is unfortunate, but you're supposed to have a right to them, and it shouldn't be stigmatized, and there is no shame. I have been using these programs for years for myself, and they've been very helpful to keeping me alive. They don't do enough, but it's better than nothing, and it's been helpful to me, it's been helpful to my family, and everybody should deserve their right to access these programs, especially when you're eligible. So it's a whole other video to talk about how basic human rights should be accessible to everyone and not just those eligible, but I sidetracked. We'll stay on topic. Eligibility and benefit information. So Medi-Cal Eligibility, I took this from the California Department of Healthcare Services. Basically, Medi-Cal, all these programs are based on income level, but they might look at a lot of different factors to determine your income level. In general, Medi-Cal is somewhat the most straightforward in that your eligibility is based on 138% of the federal poverty level, looking at your income. Getting into the federal poverty level is, again, could be its own video, but it's a predetermined income level that the government has set based on a few factors. You could also get Medi-Cal if you are 65 or older, blind, disabled, according to the government, which is you have to prove that. Such as by getting SSI or SSDI. Just know certain programs would qualify you as disabled and therefore also qualify you for Medi-Cal. Also, if you're under 21, you can qualify for Medi-Cal, but I believe it's also income dependent. Some pregnant people qualify for Medi-Cal. If you're in a skilled nursing facility or intermediate care home, on a refugee status, are a parent or caretaker of an eligible child, or if you have certain medical conditions such as breast or cervical cancer. Actually, I don't know too much about that program, but it's called the Breast and Cervical Cancer Treatment Program. We're not going to go into detail for any one of these eligibility requirements because it would take a long time, but just giving you the overview, and if you think you might qualify, I tend to think it's worth applying to these programs. There's not a penalty to applying to the programs as long as you don't falsify any information. So if you think you might be eligible, I would say apply, especially because if you're close to eligibility, you are probably in need of one or more of these benefits. Okay. Another thing is, as I mentioned, if you're enrolled in certain programs, you can get Medi-Cal, such as CalFresh, SSI, which are Social Security programs based on income as well, which is partially why if you're eligible for one of these other programs that are based on eligibility, financial eligibility, then you might be also eligible for Medi-Cal, refugee assistance, or the foster care or adoption assistance program. Now, there is a long list of benefits that Medi-Cal provides. In short, Medi-Cal will provide you with anything that's deemed medically necessary. Your doctor may have to fill out a few extra forms to prove that, but that is what is supposed to be the rule for Medi-Cal. So even if you don't see something on this list, doesn't necessarily mean it's not covered. It just might mean that there are extra forms that might need to be filled out by your doctor or by another provider. Medi-Cal also provides basic dental services and prescription medications, which are all kind of separated out a bit into their own programs, but just so you know. Again, very long list, so we won't go through every single thing, unfortunately, but anything medically necessary, basic dental care for people of all ages, by the way. It used to just be like children up through young adults and people who are older, but the rules have changed, and now in California, everybody is eligible as long as you meet the other eligibility criteria. Now, CalFresh eligibility and benefits, I'm going to combine into one slide because it was conveniently combined by the Alameda County Social Services, which is where I got this list of information. CalFresh eligibility, so Medi-Cal was based on 138% of the federal poverty line, and CalFresh in general is based on about 200% of the federal poverty line for your maximum income level. You can be under the income level, by the way, so if you make less than the income levels listed, you are eligible. For CalFresh, there are other eligibility criteria, not just necessarily income as well, just like Medi-Cal. For example, people receiving SSI again, or some types of immigrants, as well as unhoused people. By the way, some assets may not count for things like Medi-Cal and CalFresh. For example, having a house doesn't count against you. Having a car under a certain worth doesn't count against you for a lot, if not all of these programs. I actually forgot to look into that. Okay, future right here. I looked into this a bit more, and in general, your house and your car, if you own either of those, don't count against you as an asset. Your car for each program may have to be under a certain retail value, but otherwise, yes, neither of those count against you for any of the programs that I'm going to be talking about, which is great. But again, if you are close to these eligibility criteria, I do encourage you to apply. Okay, so CalFresh eligibility, students are a special consideration as well. There used to be, I think, a ban, like a full ban, like students could not get CalFresh, but the rules have been updated, so students are eligible for CalFresh, but they have additional eligibility requirements. Again, we're not going to go over every single one, but one thing that's important to note is generally financial aid doesn't count as income. You could still be considered low income and eligible for CalFresh. Also, this list of things is that I have on the right here for who's eligible for CalFresh. If only one of these things qualify for you, you might still be eligible for CalFresh. Again, it's a complicated process. I'm going to share some resources, by the way, I forgot to mention in the video description. So I'll have links to everywhere I got this information, plus some more informative links so that you can look into this more yourself when you go to potentially apply yourself. Okay. So cash aid, I'm going to give a little bit more info and eligibility information. So what is cash aid? And it is actually a variety of programs, as I mentioned, that gives cash assistance to low-income and disabled people based on specific needs and requirements. That's my short definition for this program. Some of these programs are loans, just to let you know, that must be paid back, while some are not, mainly thinking of general assistance, otherwise called as general relief. Programs include, as mentioned, general assistance, also known as general relief, CalWORKs, refugee cash assistance programs for immigrants, assistance dog special allowance program, something I had heard of before, but not the name of the program, so that was interesting, and trafficking and crime victim assistance programs. Descriptions of these programs tend to be vague, so That's another reason why we're not going to get too much into it for the purposes of this video, which is focusing on applications. And as I mentioned, general assistance is usually a loan program, so you would have to pay that back. Sorry, yeah, I didn't actually put on the slides like what this is, what cash aid is. In general, what these programs aim to do is get direct money that you can spend on your needs, on your daily living needs. So get that money directly into your hands. So unlike, for example, Medi-Cal money, that doesn't go directly to you. It is filtered through a healthcare, like your healthcare, and you get healthcare services directly. CalFresh, that money gets loaded onto an EBT card, which is basically like having a debit card, and you can only use that money on food and like an extremely limited number of restaurants, which are mostly fast food restaurants. And then unlike those programs, Cash Aid just gives you cash still loaded onto an EBT card, kind of like it's like a debit card, but you can use it on a wider variety of your daily living necessities. So, an important note about households as well, because all of these programs are looking at your household income. So a household is defined by who you generally make purchases with and who you share income with. It's not defined by your living address, which is very important. So if you have roommates or family members living at the same address as you, but you have a separate income and you have separate purchases, you are separate households, even though you're living in the same house potentially. So some examples that I'm going to give you. You and your roommate buy separate food and have separate bank accounts. You are separate households. Even if you split some purchases, such as rent and a few agreed upon items, you're still separate households. So you and your partner have separate bank accounts and spend independently from each other. You are separate households. Now, for example, you are married to a spouse and you share bank accounts. You might be a single household. Another example, you are a dependent of your parents and they help you with your purchases. You may be a single household in that case with your parents as well. And this is important for eligibility, as I stated, because they will be asking you questions on the application about what's your household income, members of your household. So don't include your roommates if you don't have shared items, and don't necessarily even include your family members if you're not having shared purchases and you don't have a shared income or shared bank account. You may not be in the same household as your family members, and in fact, that's pretty common. Okay, future right here, I wanted to add one more thing about how you can apply to these programs that I've mentioned through other options besides the BenefitsCal application process, just in case that you wanted to do that. And there are multiple ways per program that you can apply. So I'm going to go through each one just to show you real quick. So for Medi-Cal, you can apply online through the Covered California website. You can also apply by mail. They have the application available for download on the Department of Healthcare Services website, DHCS, and they have the application in several languages, though not every language. So you may need to apply in person or over the phone if your language is not listed here. Anyway, you would mail these applications to your local Medi-Cal office, which is usually called something like the County Social Services Office or the County Health and Human Services, something like that. You can also apply in person at one of the same office, the County Social Services, Medi-Cal Health and Human Services office. You can also apply with a health navigator, which is someone who may work with the county or may work for a nonprofit, and they may be called something like an eligibility worker, a caseworker, social worker, and they help you apply for multiple programs, Medi-Cal, CalFresh, Cash Aid, sometimes other programs as well, designed to help get you those benefits. And they basically do what I'm trying to do in this video. They'll walk you through the application process, answer your questions, and get you connected to resources. For CalFresh, you can go to getcalfresh.org and apply online through their own separate online application program. And you can also contact your county office. It'll usually be the same office as Medi-Cal, so some kind of social services office. For cash aid, as mentioned, there's multiple programs, and each program has its own process, but generally there is a running theme of contacting your local county for further assistance and to apply. For general assistance, same thing, contact your local county, and they may have a phone number listed, or they may tell you to go in person. Usually they have both options. They may also have an application listed that you can mail or fax to your county. For the cash assistance programs for immigrants, also called CAPI, you can get the application online through the California Department of Social Services and then mail it to your county office or fax it. There also could be an email option. For the Assistance Dog Special Allowance Program, if you already qualify through a program that you've gotten accepted to, such as SSI, IHSS, CAPI, SSDI, you can use one of the appropriate ASDA 1 forms and then mail that to the California Department of Social Services, and the address is available online. You can also reach out to them. They say reach out for questions, but if you're already receiving the allowance, or you're supposed to be receiving the allowance, but you may also be able to just reach out for questions about the application process through this phone number that they have listed, as well as emailing them at the email listed on the website. For the California Veterans Cash Benefits Program, you again contact, this time not your county social services office, but you would contact your local Social Security Administration office, or SSA office. For the tribal TANF program, you contact your county social services agency, or you can walk in person and apply for services. Generally, that's also an acceptable option for any of these other programs that we listed too. You can just walk in person. There may be a bit of a wait time. Same with calling on the phone, there may be a bit of a wait time. And by a bit, I mean anywhere from 15 minutes to over an hour. For trafficking and crime victim assistance program, you would again contact your local social services office, and you can also apply in person. Okay, so hopefully that was informative, and now we're going to move on to showing you how to apply through the BenefitsCal. Okay, we are looking at BenefitsCal, which is your centralized application process. BenefitsCal is new-ish, implemented in all counties in the past year, I think. Maybe it's been a couple years now. I've lost track of time in my disability process, which probably I'll make a video about at some point. Probably when I talk about applying for SSI, which I completed. Anyway, I have some pros and cons with BenefitsCal, but I do appreciate that it has become a simplified process to apply to Medi-Cal, CalFresh, and Cash Aid, no matter what your county is. This is what we're going to be using. As I said, it's your one application stop to applying for Medi-Cal, CalFresh, and Cash Aid, and you can find this application at www.benefitscal.com, and I'll also have that link in the video description, of course. That would be very important. So I'm gonna make an account. We're gonna walk through the process together, and should be fun. Maybe. It probably won't be fun, but we're going to get it done, and we're going to get it done together, and hopefully as quick as possible. Okay, so we're going to go to create an account. You are getting benefits or want to apply for benefits. You're going to choose this first option here. And here's this household thing. So just if you want to see, if you are part of a multi-person household, whoever is like the primary person that you want to be dealing with the stuff on the case, should be creating the account. You can add people as an authorized person on a case. That's not too hard to do. In theory, I have had local counties mess up that part of the process, so I would recommend inputting the information of the person who is going to be dealing with communication for this your benefits, which is supposed to be the person generally who is filling out the information. Sometimes you can have a different person filling out your information, like maybe you fill it out together or you authorize someone else to do it. As I said, there's a whole authorized person process, but yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Okay, so county do we live in? We're gonna say Sacramento County, California's capital. That is where Ray's soapbox is from. So, okay, first name, Ray. You put your own information. So in this case, this is the person applying. Ray, soapbox, email. So by the way, the email that you use again should be the email for wherever you want to receive communication. It should be an email that you can log into for two-factor authentication. You can also put it in a phone number, which is optional. That's helpful, as mentioned, for two-factor reset or a password reset sometimes. So personally, I would recommend it. I'm not a robot. Click that you're not a robot unless you are a robot, in which case you are unfortunately barred from welfare benefits. Okay, so now it's going to ask us to set up a few questions. I'll probably skip over this part, but you set up your security questions and, for things that will help you log in. Okay, so, once you get past the security step, it'll send you an email verification. So now we can log in. Logging in, and gotta do the verification again. Do you agree with our terms of use? Accessing a U.S. government system. You have to accept to move forward. Yep, I didn't put a number. Do you want to add one? I don't think I've ever seen this double question mark. Anyway, do you want to add one? Not right now. And that's fine. You don't have to add one. Okay, welcome, Ray. We are at the dashboard. We've made it to the dashboard. Now, if you have an existing account, by the way, or an existing case, this where for things to do and link to an existing case, that's where you could put in your case information and get your, like if you applied by paper and you wanted to now move online, you could do that. We're going to do a new application. So, things to do: apply for benefits, start a new application. It'll bring you to this page, which will be like what to expect. Give yourself 30 to 60 minutes to apply. I'd say that's about accurate, especially if you're doing multiple programs instead of just applying to one or two. Have your income information ready, as well as like your basic information. Social security number can be helpful, for example, if you have one. You can apply if you don't, by the way. Anyway, some documents. Now, technically, not just technically, you can submit your application without submitting any documents, and you can get the process started. They're going to ask you for the information later, and it can help speed things up when you have submitted your documents. I would say it does speed things up. Now, I have found in interviews that a lot of the times, the caseworker who is doing your intake interview, after you submit your application, they schedule a time to talk to you on the phone, and they're supposed to look at what you submitted ahead of time, but usually the case manager or caseworker, I should say, doesn't have time for that, and they don't, or sometimes they just can't see it for some reason. So it still speeds up like the time that it takes, because if you keep track of what you submitted, you can say like, oh, I submitted these things, and then they know to look for it. They should be looking for it anyway, but then they know. But you can submit all of those things after your intake interview, or you can submit it in the time between when you submitted your application and the time you're waiting for an intake interview. And they can't initially turn you away just because you didn't upload documents. They can turn you away if you didn't give things like income information, which is vitally important for basically all these welfare programs, or some other kind of eligibility information. So you take your time, you fill out the application, upload documents, they review the application, as I said, and they schedule an interview. They give you some interview tips. I said phone interview, you can choose to do an in-person interview. Sometimes they auto-schedule it, and then you have to call to get it corrected, but the interviews they auto-schedule are, I think, always phone. I've never had one not be a phone interview, and that's for CalFresh, and Cash Aid. And the interviews do take about an hour or so, mostly again because the case worker is looking at all the documents you uploaded for the first time and probably looking at your case overall for the first time. Okay, so let's begin. Some helpful tips. I agree with this. Fill out as much information as you can if you have. And now, if it's going to prevent you from doing this application, just do the bare minimum. Get it done. You can get the rest of the information in later, especially as long as you have the basic eligibility information in. But it does help to do as much as possible. It makes the process faster and more likely for you to get accepted without having to go through an appeal process. There are some required questions like your name and I think your birthday. It will get into it. Okay, we're gonna just go ahead. Okay, diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. That's nice. I guess you can say how you're feeling. I just okay, I guess. Okay, so we'll start at the beginning. Feature right here, just wanted to add an additional note that I don't think I mentioned before. My application is probably going to look at least a little bit different from many people's application. I'm going to be filling this out as if I am a single person household with like one source of income, give or take. So it'll be simplified overview. So your application, depending on how your answers differ from mine, your application questions may look different than mine. In fact, it's very likely to have extra questions, especially depending on the more you add on in terms of other family members that are in your household or other assets that you may have, etc. So if you do come across any questions that you're not familiar with or that I didn't cover and you need some clarification on, please leave a comment and I'll do my best to get back to you as fast as I can. Best wishes, and let's continue with the video. Okay. So language, there's a lot of choices. We're going to stick with English. What language do you prefer to speak? They have spoken languages. They also have American Sign Language. What language would you prefer to complete this application? So that is separate, which is good. So English. And your county office is required by law to provide you an interpreter when you ask for one at no cost to you. And a lot of places mess up on the interpreter rules, but you are entitled to an interpreter if they don't give you one, and sometimes they will try to refuse you one. Definitely submit a complaint when you have the ability to, or have someone else submit a complaint on your behalf, which you can do as well. Okay, next. So we're going to fill out our information again. Okay, any suffix if you have one, and if you have other names like a maiden name or a nickname, you might include it in here, or a chosen name. You could also do that here. I believe you are supposed to put your legal name, and if your legal name does not match your actual name or your chosen name, I generally recommend that people put their legal name if they feel able to. Otherwise, you risk being denied, or it can slow down the application process if your name that you're filling out doesn't match with things like the name on your social security number or the name on your ID that you upload. Not only can it slow it down, it can get you denied, so that can be tough. This application process is not very trans friendly, or like even for, people having like other names. For whatever reason, it's not very friendly to that. Also, these are like federally funded programs as well, which is a whole other thing about rules that they have to follow, which is why, for example, the federal poverty, I said I wasn't going to get sidetracked. This could be a whole its own video. So first and last name is required. If you have other names that you might want to go by, this might be another good place to put that, or just put other legal names that you might have gone by. You don't have to do that, especially for my trans folk who might get triggered by having their legal or their dead name being used. You don't have to give that information. You could just put your current legal name. Okay, moving on. Are you currently experiencing homelessness? So you would put yes or no. We're going to say no for this video. We're going to say my address. I'm not doxing myself. I am just putting the Capitol building address. I do like to have like a little this says character profile, but I do find it helpful to have like copy and paste basic information about me when I'm filling out these forms, because some of them go in multiple times, or it's just nice to copy and paste it from somewhere, so that can be helpful. Next, so it might tell you to use a suggested address, which yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do. I like to do that just in case. Do I get my mail at a different address? No. Contact information, phone number. You don't have to put any of this. I don't feel like typing it in again, so I'm not going to, but you could. I would recommend putting some kind of phone information in here. Also, emails can be helpful, so you can get your email information to you about, for example, the phone interview that they schedule with you. I think they can email that to you, so that's helpful. Would you like to get text messages, email alerts? Now, you can sign up for that. I have signed up for it. I'm going to skip all this because we're not putting in an email or phone number. So now we get to choose our programs. So for the purposes of this video, we're going to be applying to all three: food, cash aid, and health coverage. And I am applying for benefits myself, but you could click no if you were not applying if you were, for example, applying for someone else, like say a child. Are you a person with a disability or need help to apply? So I'm gonna say no, but if you said yes, they just tell you to contact your local office, which is it is helpful to tell people, but I wish that we had a better system. Anyway, in our case, we don't need extra help, or at least in my case. If you do, please get the help that you have a legal right to, per the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. Are you a person who is deaf or hard of hearing? No, but if you were, your county office can provide an interpreter for you at no cost. And that is the right everyone has, as mentioned. Are you a college student? So, as mentioned in the little presentation, college students do have additional eligibility rules for CalFresh. In our case, though, we're not going to go through all that. We're just going to say no. Do you want to authorize someone to help you with your CalFresh case? This is what I was talking about earlier, when you can set an authorized representative, someone who can speak for you, as it says, help you complete forms or access information. So a case manager might be an authorized representative, or a family member. Someone could be anyone, as long as you designate that person and give their information. In our case, we're going to say no. Or I should stop saying our case. In my case, I'm going to say no. But for you, it might be different. So do you want to name someone to get and spend your CalFresh benefits for you? That is also an option. Basically, for example, this might be if you have aid. So technically, when you get CalFresh, not just technically, in actuality as well, when you get CalFresh or cash aid as well on your EBT card that they give you, you're supposed to be the only one who has access to that card and is spending money from that card, unless you authorize someone else who is allowed to do that for you, such as a worker, a home health person, like through IHSS, or IHSS is in-home supportive services, which is when you can get someone paid by Medi-Cal who comes to help you out with your daily living needs. There's other programs like that, but you can authorize anyone as long as you tell them that you authorize someone else to have your card and spend the money and buy food on your behalf for you. The money still has to be for you. That's an important thing for CalFresh. You're not supposed to buy food for other people with your CalFresh money. The food is supposed to be for you. Okay, so do you want to authorize someone to help you with your health coverage applications? Again, authorized representative. Because this application is going through Medi-Cal, CalFresh, and Cash Aid, you might see some of the questions repeated, but in a slightly different way because they're asking per each program. So I'm going to say no again, but you could say yes. It will then ask you for another that person's information. Okay. Have you applied for Medi-Cal or other health insurance through Covered California? That's Covered California is another place you can apply for Medi-Cal. Instead of doing it online here, you could do it through Covered California. In this case, we haven't, so. Okay, so input your birthday. Do I have a social security? If you have a social security number, it can help speed up the application process a little bit, and it can help with verifying your identity. And if you input it now, you don't have to give it later. You also don't have to have a social security number because immigrants can also qualify for some of these programs. It's up to you whether you put it in now or later. I would generally advise, if you have one, I would put it in now because, again, it can help with some of the verification process and help speed up your application a little bit sometimes. And I'm going to say I don't have mine right now. And it'll ask why I don't have one. And I'm going to say don't have it with me right now. What's your marital status? Put whatever applies best to you. I'm going to put single. I guess it bears brief explanation. Yeah, there's a lot of options in California. Well, more options than some other states have. Generally, just follow, like, use what you put on your taxes, for example, for like your marital status. Or put whatever is most current information if you didn't have the same thing on your taxes. But like think about like how you would define it on your taxes. Next, let's go over questions about citizenship and immigration. Let me just open this link. Let's just see where it takes us. That's nice that they remind you that you have 15 minutes to go back to your application. This is just some information about CalFresh and immigration, and let's see, like, for example, which immigrants can get CalFresh. So here's the list. I'm not going to read all of them, but for some people, it depends on your refugee status, which is why they list some of these, or like asylum status for some of people from certain parts of the world. Whole list of eligibility, possible eligibility criteria, and some people who may not have qualification, or eligibility, I should say. Okay. So, are you a U.S. citizen or national? If not, that is okay. For some people, you can still be eligible, as we've gone over. And they do have definitions, which is nice. And U.S. nationals are people who aren't citizens but owe permanent allegiance to the United States. I see. And they're asking because of eligibility criteria. And your information won't be shared with immigration enforcement. Am I a citizen or national? Yes. We're going to go for that for the purposes of this application. And am I a sponsored non-citizen? No. But what do we mean? That means someone who is admitted into the U.S. because another person or group agreed to support them. Okay. Now we're going to go over some questions about my background. What's your gender? I'm just going to say I prefer not to answer. Now, let me go back to this. So it is optional. Yeah, they say they use it for civil rights statistics, but later your gender or your assigned sex at birth does get tied to your case and account for your identity, and you do have to choose based on what your legal sex is. Now, you can have a court order that changes your documented sex, which is great, but because these are all based on federal programs, there are only two options for gender and sex right now, and they will use them interchangeably, and that is either male or female. So just a heads up. Okay. All these questions, these next few questions are going to be just like about collecting statistics, so these are optional. You can also tell that there's no like red asterisk. They have problematic stuff, as if trans men and trans women are not just also men and women. Okay, we'll just choose non-binary though. Sexual orientation, this is another optional question. Are you Hispanic, Latino, or a Spanish origin? Optional questions. I am not. What is your race and ethnic origin? Another optional question. White. Okay, great job. Now at this next step, you can save and exit, which is a nice option if you're a little tired, or you can add people that you live with in your household, which we talked about in the chapter. To summarize, your household is generally people that you share income and or purchases with. Okay, start. So I'm not going to add any fictional people to my fictional household. So it is confirming what programs you're applying for. By the way, you can do this application and not click some of these. Let's say you just wanted to do the CalFresh application or just wanted to do the Medi-Cal and CalFresh application but not cash aid, you could do that in case that wasn't clear. So do you have other people living in your household? I'm going to say no, but in your case you might have a few extra steps. All that information that you filled out for yourself, you're going to be going through a similar process for other people in your household, just giving their basic information. Okay, and because we didn't have any more people add, we're on to the next step. Household details. So does this household plan to file federal tax return for next year? This doesn't impact your eligibility, but it is a required question. I'm going to say yes. The answer if we filed jointly with a spouse. Will I claim any dependents? No.
Hello, Future Ray here. I messed up the recording of this section previously, so I wanted to do some correction, and I did a little more digging to make sure I get it right this time. So this question, would you like to use income data such as information from tax returns to make it easier to determine eligibility for paying for health coverage in future years? Basically, what this means is they use your income data from when you file taxes to determine if you can automatically renew coverage for Medi-Cal or if you are not eligible anymore. So from what I've found, you can use this, and it's most recommended for people who have similar sources of income from year to year, or their income doesn't change that much. If you are self-employed or your income varies a lot, you may not want to use this option. So I haven't used this that much, so I can't speak to how well it works, but I did find a report that said most people do choose to use this option, and you can give permission from anywhere from 1 to 5 years. So by the way, if you choose not to use this option, then you just go through the normal process. Your local county will poke you about renewing and giving your updated income information once a year, and you will just go through that process like many other people. Generally, if your income changes, you're supposed to report it to your county within 10 days. But if nothing changes, there's a standardized process for renewing your Medi-Cal eligibility, and that you can just use that if you don't want to use your tax return information. Sorry about recording this wrong, and I hope this helps better clarify.
Okay, next, let's see if any of the below apply to you. So it asks if you've received any public assistance, which could qualify you. These are just things that help with eligibility. If you're currently pregnant, a person with disability, I'm going to say I am. Enrolled in a college or trade school, get food from somewhere other than home, such as a dining facility for elderly or disabled people, or another food program such as like Meals on Wheels. Live in a facility, shelter, or other living arrangement, are just feeding a child, currently serving or have served in the U.S. military, was in foster care, planning to leave California, or none of these apply. Does the disability limit your activities, such as bathing, dressing, and daily chores? This is just in my case, yes. I'm not in a medical facility or nursing home. Do you need help with activities of daily living? Yep. Please explain. I would say need help with my activities of daily living. I can't cook, clean, or take care of chores without assistance. For example, I personally would write like as detailed as possible, but it's also not needed for your application to be eligible, but I just like to provide a lot of detail because one, I'm autistic, and two, it helps in your application process when you can point to a lot of eligibility criteria. If you definitely can be eligible for any of these programs, even if you just meet one eligibility criteria, as long as that's one that was needed. But I find if you have multiple eligibility criteria, it certainly doesn't hurt your case. And it can be helpful depending on the criteria. Anyway, it's good to provide more information when you can, is the short version of that. Okay, how long is the disability expected to last? 30 days or more? Do you need care so that someone else can work or attend school? No. Do you work and have medical expenses that are needed to help keep you working? So I don't work, so I would say no. Okay, moving on. Do any of the situations below apply to you? If any of the situations apply to you, then you may qualify for ABAWD, which is able-bodied adult without dependents. And this is particularly for CalFresh, someone who is between the ages of 18 and 54, able to work at least 20 hours per week, or a total of 80 hours, or more per month, doesn't live with children under 18. And to get CalFresh benefits for longer, able-bodied adults without dependents are expected to work, volunteer, or participate in training programs for at least 20 hours per week or 80 hours per month. Why should you fill out the details below? So part of it is making sure you're not accidentally committing fraud. So you want to report these eligibility criteria and making sure that you get the CalFresh coverage that you should be getting. But you can also have an exemption, so that will help determine if you should be getting the benefits for longer, even if you're working the 80 plus hours per week and are between 18 and 54. Okay, so has a physical or mental health issue that makes it hard to work. Great. In my case, that leads to an exemption, or it should anyway, and same if you were in a similar boat. Has a personal issue that makes it hard to work, such as issues with addiction, domestic violence, or more. Caring for a child under 6, is caring for a person who needs help caring for themselves, is getting or has applied for unemployment benefits, also known as UI, through the Employment Development Department, EDD, or is getting or has applied for disability benefits. In my case, for example, my real life example, I have SSI, so I also qualify for things like Medi-Cal and CalFresh. So I'm going to just put that here as well. Okay, select the disability benefits that you are getting or have applied. So even though SSI is through Social Security, it's a separate program. So when you see a program called Social Security, usually that's separate from SSI. SSI is supplemental security income. Even though it's through Social Security, it irks me to no end. So I'm going to say I'm getting SSI, and you could also include Social Security with things like SSDI or other Social Security programs, workers' compensation, disability insurance, veterans disability, pensions, or other. So, are you doing any of these work, volunteering, or training activities as they discussed for able-bodied adults? I'm going to say none of these apply because earlier I said I would qualify for an exemption. I have a physical or mental condition that makes it difficult for me to work. We are moving on to the next section. Here's a summary of your household details. Nice that they give that. It looks like they definitely made some updates to this application actually, so I'm just experiencing that with you. Everything looks right to me. Definitely go over and make sure everything looks right to you on your end, and we'll go to the next section. Okay, income. So let's start with employment. This is where you would put your job information. In my case, I don't have a job. Do you get money that doesn't come from work, such as work study, child or spousal support, money, gifts from other people, or loans, unemployment, workers' compensation, government aid, disability, retirement pension, foster care? I said on this application that I was going to include SSI, so I am going to say yes, because that's government aid. SSI, again, different from Social Security. Okay, you could also get Social Security disability, SSI or SSP, Social Security retirement or survivor's benefits, public assistance like CalWORKs, TANF, CAPI, RCA, and general assistance, general relief, unemployment insurance, state disability insurance, financial aid from school. By the way, I think I mentioned this in my presentation, but financial aid does not count against students who are applying for CalFresh. So, in case you didn't watch that part of the video. Work study, foster care payments, veteran income or educational benefits, government and railroad disability or retirement, tribal payments, cash bonus or penalty from CalLearn program, or cash diversion payment or non-cash services, or none of these apply. Okay, how much do you get from supplemental security income, or SSI, or state supplementary payment, SSP? I will put the max amount. And how often? Monthly. This is the max amount in California, by the way. So if you don't have any income and you have SSI, by the way, in California, you should be getting this amount. A lot of people are getting the wrong amount that then they should be getting. So will you continue to get this income? Yes, I will. Now you could add another SSI income if I don't know why you would be getting two separate SSI or SSP incomes, but you could be, I guess, and that's an option to add. Now we'd like to learn if you get money from any of the sources below. Child or spousal support, workers' compensation, gifts of money or loans, help paying for rent, food or clothing, rental or royalties, lottery or gambling winnings, pension, private disability or retirement, insurance or legal settlements, net farming or fishing, dividend and interest income. Oh, this is where you would put interest income from your bank accounts, for example. So this is relevant to a lot of people, even if it's a little bit of money. Again, you're going to have to submit bank statements almost certainly to prove eligibility. So even if it's just a little bit of interest that you've earned, you do want to probably account for this. So sales of notes, contracts, trust deeds, or promissory notes, strike benefits, room and board, other, or none of these apply. So we picked the ones relevant to us. How much do you get from dividend and interest income? I'm just going to say $1. How often? I get it monthly. Yep, monthly. Will I continue to receive this income? Sure. Okay. Do you get rent, utilities, food, or clothing for free or in exchange for work, also known as in-kind income? No. Now let's check if you have changes to your total yearly income. Does your total income change from month to month? So that can definitely apply to you if you are self-employed or you have a gig job or some other kind of setup. In my case, we're going to put no. Am I on strike? No. Did your employment change in the last year? No. Okay, so again, it'll give you a summary. You can look to make sure everything's okay and like what you meant to put. Okay, next we're going on to the section 5. Tell us more about your housing expenses. So you would select all that apply. So we're going to put a rent. Honestly, I haven't helped people with like property taxes before, but if you have that, include it. Utilities, telephone bill. Actually, we'll include rent and one utility to show you what it looks like. I guess we'll include a telephone bill too. What are your payments for rent and mortgage? I'll say we're paying $300 a month, which is it's a little under 30% of 1206. Oh, but I suppose, more people would probably be paying more rent. But unfortunately, housing is not just 30% of your income. Actually, I wish housing were free and a guaranteed right, but that's a whole other conversation. How often am I paying? I'm getting sidetracked. We're doing it monthly. Does anyone outside of your household help me pay for my expense? No. You don't enter the amounts paid by housing assistance, such as by the Housing Authority or Section 8. So that was rent. Telephone bill, we'll say it's $20 per month. Does anyone else help me outside of this? No. Okay. What are your water, sewage, and garbage expenses? So this you would check your bill, whatever bill that you get. If you have a separate water, sewage, garbage, same with any of your utilities, just check like the most recent bill that you got and input it. This is nobody's water, sewage, and garbage, but I'm going to put 20 again. We'll say it's done quarterly, and no one helps me. Okay, do you pay for adult care or child care so that you can go to work, school, or look for a job? This could include for a child or disabled adult or other dependents. So it doesn't have to be just for children. Okay, let's go over medical costs and situations. We are a little over halfway there, so hang in there. Okay, tell us about your medical costs. So select if you receive import for services, are 6-year disabled with out-of-pocket medical costs. Needs help paying medical bills from the last 3 months. Oh, that's important. Medi-Cal can retroactively cover your medical care costs over the last 3 months if you were eligible or should have been eligible for that time period. Has special needs expenses, or none of these apply. I'm going to say none of these apply for my application. Let's learn more about the health coverage in your household. If you're enrolled in health coverage currently, health coverage offered from a job, health coverage has ended in the last 90 days or is expected to end. Someone has a workers' comp claim, lawsuit, or settlement because of an accident or injury. I'm going to say my health coverage ended in the last 90 days. Let's go over court-ordered costs. So do you pay child support? I'm going to say no. Do you pay spousal support or alimony expenses? No. Okay, onward to tax costs that you can deduct. Okay, do you have any tax-deductible alimony expenses? No. Do you have any tax-deductible student loan interest? No. Actually, let's look at what that looks like. This is a tax break for people who have certain student loans from the government. It helps it lets you reduce your taxable income, so that could be relevant. Do you have any other tax-deductible expenses, such as educator expenses, IRA contribution, penalty on early withdrawal of savings, health savings account deduction, also called HSAs, or sometimes FSAs might apply here. Any deductions that are listed above the adjusted gross income line on your federal tax income return. I'm going to say no for my example. Do you want to apply for special need payment for housing or essential household items lost or damaged due to sudden and or unusual circumstances like natural disasters? In my case, I'm going to say no. Okay, it's just making sure that I did it right, that usually there's disability expenses, but I said I didn't have any disability expenses, so it gives you a little reminder or like a double check-in. Okay, so here's a summary of my expenses, and you just want to make sure that all looks right on your end. Halfway done. Part 6. Let's learn more about your financial assets and accounts. Select all that apply. Remember to include any accounts that have your name on it. I'm just going to say I have a checking account, and we'll say I have some cash, life or burial insurance, stock bonds, money market accounts, mutual funds, trust funds, savings bonds, CD accounts or certificate of deposit, IRAs, oil mining or mineral rights, uncashed checks, safe deposit box, mortgage, other assets, or none of these apply. Okay, how much money is in your checking account? On your end, you would want to look in, log into your bank or whatever and look at how much is in your account. Go to a bank to find that out, ATM, whatever. We'll say I have $50 in my checking account. This is not a joint account. Oh, the bank is, I don't know, what's a popular bank? Bank of America, because we all know I'm very patriotic. Not a joint account. Okay, and how much cash up do I have on hand? We'll say I have $20. $20 seems to be my favorite amount for some reason. Let's review the vehicles that you may own or use. You can own one house and one vehicle. I think I read that there's a value limitation of the vehicle up to about $38,000 or so, but you can own a house and a vehicle up to a certain worth and not have it count against you in terms of your assets for CalFresh and Medi-Cal. Not sure about cash aid, might depend on the county as well. In my case though, let's say I don't own a vehicle and you use a vehicle that you don't own. I don't believe it counts against you, again, for Medi-Cal and CalFresh if it's not yours. We'll say no. You'll only review this next section if you own property. Okay, do you own property? In this case, I'm gonna say no. In your case, if you own property, they'll ask you some more questions. Now a few questions about business and personal property. Do you own a business or personal property item worth more than $500? I'm gonna say no. Let's go over items of value that you have sold or given away. For Medi-Cal only, did you sell, give away, trade, or transfer anything of value in the last 2.5 years or 30 months? This can include cars, homes, stocks, sporting goods, guns, jewelry, art, or antiques. I'm going to say no. So give you a summary, make sure your asset summary is correct. And we're going on to the next section. Other situations. You may be able to get even more help. Select the services that interest you, if any, and someone will follow up. So if you would like to know more about vaccines, free or low-cost vaccines for children or adult family members in your home, or child health and disability prevention, you can click either of those. They'll follow up with you, or they should. They usually send you something in the mail. It's free information if you want more information. It never hurts. Please answer the statements below. Why do we ask these questions? Looking at it, it's questions about crimes and especially fraud if you committed fraud before. If you have before, you are not necessarily ineligible, but there may be, depending on the time in which you were convicted of committing fraud or some of these other crimes, it may make you ineligible. Yeah, it depends on the time frame and when you were convicted and how long ago that was. Moving on, we're going to say none of these apply to us. If you don't answer honestly, that is also a form of fraud. So just putting that out there. So have you convicted of receiving duplicate food assistance in any state after September 22nd, 1996? No. Trafficking, trading, or selling EBT cards worth $500 or more after September 22nd, 1996? No. Fun fact, these 1996 dates are relative to Bill Clinton and his policies of making tighter restrictions for welfare benefits to prevent fraud a bit, but also a lot of his policies greatly harmed people who could have greatly benefited from these benefits as well. Okay, anyway, have you been convicted of a parole or probation violation? Have you been found guilty of trading food assistance for drugs in any state after September 22nd, 1996? Trading food assistance for guns, ammunition, or explosives after September 22nd, 1996? Have you had cash aid stopped for welfare fraud, penalty, sanctions, or non-cooperation with eligibility requirements? Are you hiding or running from the law for a felony crime or attempted felony crime? We're going to say no to all of those. Great job! We are on to section 8. So this is basically just about the end. This is the end of questions. Now, this is where you would upload documentations. Now, I'm not going to be uploading any documents because I'm not going to actually end up submitting this, but this is where you would do it. You basically click upload. It'll take you to your default folder. For a lot of people, that's downloads, and you take it from there. And so basically what you're going to want to do to best speed up your interview and your application, you want proof of identity, like a driver's license or identification card, probably your social security number if you have it, or your social security card if you have it, any kind of proof of income, your bank account statements if you have a bank account, and then any other information if you can about the assets if you have any that you provided information for, and your costs, whatever you spend money on. So like rent, you can include your lease, for example, or your mortgage if that applies to you, your utilities, that sort of thing. You can also include information about childcare if it applies to you, citizenship status, disability information. Like if you have SSI, you should be eligible for Medi-Cal and CalFresh automatically. You could include your verification letter, school information, any kind of welfare to work or travel claims. And yeah, it has a link at the top, so you can reference like what documents you need. The application is a little tedious, but I do feel it's better to fill this one out than the paper application, which is even more tedious because it doesn't walk you through in a easily understood way what each item is requesting. So I'm gonna skip this route. You can, as I stated, you can skip uploading documents. So you can upload them later, or like before your phone interview, or you can upload them during your phone interview. If you don't upload them during or before the phone interview and you haven't proven eligibility, your application is likely to be denied. So I do recommend uploading some proof of eligibility at some point by the time of your phone interview or during the phone interview. But you don't have to submit the application. So I'm going to continue to submit. We are not quite ready to submit yet though, so there is one more time to review. You will look at everything and make sure everything looks as you want it. They recommend uploading social security number, phone, or email. I'm going to skip that for now. Also, this is where they'll see if you qualify for expedited food assistance. So that could be if your monthly gross income is less than $150 and your cash on hand checking, say, the cash that you have basically directly available to you is $100 or less. By the way, expedited food assistance is where you can get CalFresh benefits, I think within 3 days or sometimes within the same day, up to the same day. So that's great for those who need. I wish that they had that kind of quick process for everyone because everyone who's eligible needs CalFresh. Are you a migrant or seasonal farm worker with liquid assets under $100? But we're going to put no for everything, but that's where you would, if you do have that qualification, I definitely encourage you to state that and get your case expedited if possible. So you may be able to get money or aid quickly to help with any of the below emergencies. Select if you have your utilities shut off or a shut-off notice, will run out of food in 3 days or less, need essential clothing, need rides to get food, clothing, medical care, or other emergency items, have an eviction notice or notice to pay rent or leave, have immediate medical needs, are a victim of child abuse, are a victim of domestic abuse, a victim of elder abuse, are pregnant, have other emergency which threatens health or safety, or none of these apply. I'll say none of these apply for my example. We'll need to chat with you before you start receiving benefits. Do you prefer an in-person or phone interview for CalFresh? I would say phone. Do you need any other arrangements due to a disability? I'm going to say no. Okay, so this would be the case where they remind you, if you haven't already, to put in a phone number. You can skip it for now, but if you skip it, they don't have a good way to set up a phone interview with you. So I think at some point they need your phone number because they do call you for the phone interview as opposed to you calling them. I'm going to skip for now though. Do you want to register to vote at your current address? I forgot you can combine registering to vote in addition to Medi-Cal, CalFresh, and CAPI. So I'm going to say I'm already registered, or actually I'll just say I don't want to register to vote. And this is just saying, like, registering to vote or not won't impact your application. Also, you can get help with filling out the voter registration form, and if you think someone has interfered with your right to register, to decline to register to vote, your privacy in deciding it, or your right to choose your own political party preference, you can call the Secretary of State or otherwise contact them in these ways. Okay, you're almost done. Now you would just need to sign your application. A spouse, parent, domestic, registered domestic partner, or authorized representative may need to sign too if it's applicable. Okay, so you would read through all your agreements, basically that you told the truth and that you agree, you understand your rights and responsibilities, you understand the program rules and penalties, which you should read over, and that your information may be shared with the relevant government agencies, and if applicable, you're giving Medi-Cal agency the right to pursue and get any money from other health insurance, legal settlements, or third parties, and then you would read your rights, responsibilities, and other information. You do have to get to the bottom, I believe, to have this box checkable, and this is just that you confirm that you read everything, and then you would select your individual type. For a lot of folks, it's going to be applicant or some kind of other authorized member. You would type your name, probably your legal name, the name that you used to fill out the form. We go back to it's not a very trans-friendly application or friendly to people with multiple names. Check the box that you are signing this application electronically and you agree that your electronic signature is the legal equivalent. And I'm not going to click next because I don't really want to submit, and I'm not sure if that next is a submission button, but you're basically at the end here. You've made it through, and this is it. So wow, we did it. Okay, good job, everyone. If you have any questions, let me just go back to. If you have any questions, definitely put them in the comment section. I'll do my best to get to them as fast as I can and answer them to the best of my ability. If I'm not sure about something, I will research it for you and try to get you the best answer that I can. Thanks for hanging in there. Hopefully, I'll be able to edit this down so it'll be as speedy of a video as possible. And I hope this was helpful. Hello, Future Ray here. You just can't get rid of me. I had one more thing I wanted to add, and that is what happens if you have an unfavorable decision and you need to appeal. For example, if they determine you ineligible for any of the programs that you apply for, or they grant you eligibility, but for example, if you applied for a cash assistance program like CalFresh or cash aid of some sort, and they didn't grant you the full amount of money that you think you deserve. So that happens quite frequently, unfortunately, and they should include instructions on how to submit the appeal, but if you want that information a little earlier, or if you just need to find that information again, I will include links to this website in the video description, and I'm going to go over it real quick now. So generally, you have 90 days to file an appeal from the date of the notice of action that they give you. You can appeal after 90 days, but you have to show that you have good reason. For example, if you had a family emergency close to the time you are going to appeal, and that was close to that 90-day deadline, and it caused you to go past the 90-day deadline, that could be a good reason for why you had to go over. So you can apply for an appeal by mail. You can use the address listed on this website, and they usually give you a prepaid envelope. You can also call the state hearing division at 800-743-8525, or you can request a hearing online using the appeals case management system. You would create an account on this website and then write the reason for your appeal there and cite your case and everything. So that's all. I hope this was helpful, and thank you so much. I wish you all the best in applying for these benefits because you deserve them.